This is Mark Robertson, the Emergency Management Director for the university, right?
Right.
Okay. And he's thankfully given us 2 presentations today, and then tomorrow at 9:30 it is the same presentation, should you want to come back tomorrow.
So I am a contact tracer for the university, and if one of us is wearing a mask and we're 6 feet away, we're good. Are you okay if I take mine off while I do this? Because I think it'll be a little bit easier for you to understand me. So this presentation, we'll walk through it a bit, but as somebody that's a little older, we always started all the movies when I was a kid, started with a cartoon, so we're going to start with a cartoon.
And now, another really obvious preparedness fact.
Okay, so here we are, me up on the screen, and you out there about to watch a preparedness presentation. Just in case you fall asleep, you can find everything right here at emergency.unl.edu. Spoiler alert, most of the stuff you'll hear about is right here on this poster. And now, let's get to it. Lots of things you probably already know.
So we always like to thank our preparedness guy before we get going.
Oh, sure. Anytime. Let me know if you need some help.
You bet. So the students always get a kick out of it when I tell them that I actually get paid to do those. So it's just another career choice. So this is kind of our learning objectives, if you will, this morning or afternoon. I want to talk a little bit about what our office is, one whole slide on that. And then most of this is about your safety plans, what you can do for yourself to be safe, not only on campus, but anywhere you go. These things apply. And then we'll talk a little bit about the organizational plans. I know you've been working on your organizational plans and you've done a lot of work there. We'll talk slightly about the emergency management teams that are on campus too, because a lot of people just don't know about that. And then there's a slide about some of the online resources too. And even though there's a joke about you already know this, there's pieces of that you learned, and generationally it's different for all of us, what we learned. Younger folks have had a great deal more safety training in the elementary school, high school level than people my age have. So there may be some stuff that you do learn here today. So the point of this slide is I'm housed in the police department. Chief Ramza is my supervisor. But we have a lot of folks besides police officers too. And I always like to point out that we are an accredited police department. There's quite a bit that goes into that to show that we meet best practices for nationwide police departments. But we also have, not only we have all the police things, the canines, and we have the community service officers that primarily work in the residence halls, and they help us out with security on football and things like that too. We have dispatchers. Dispatch is very similar to the 911 in the city. It's not exactly the same. If a 911 call comes in from campus, it goes to the 911 center, but they also see it here, and then we handle it here, depending on what it is. If it's a medical call, the 911 dispatchers dispatch medical. We dispatch the police department. We also have the emergency management. Under me, there's accreditation, and there's human resources there too. And then the human resources person's over the student workers. A lot of student workers at the police department end up becoming either police officers or one of the other roles in the department too. Students tend to really like it when they work there. It's an interesting job. And then we have a good deal of IT because there's so much that happens out of the police department. All the building access, the card access is in the police department, as well as all this closed circuit TVs on campus, which, I don't know, there's about 3,000 cameras on campus, believe it or not. And then our GIS, our graphical information system for mapping on campus, is also housed in the police department. A lot of other people have access to it, but that's where it's, and then the public safety systems like fire alarms and door ajar and all those kind of things come to us too. So as far as your safety plans, the best place to start is make sure you're signed up for UNL Alert. This slide shows all the different ways that you can get it. If this computer in here has the It has the capability to do it. Whether or not it's been updated to do it, I don't know. But if we got a UNL alert and this computer has been configured like I'd like it to be, a UNL alert will pop up here, and then you can disregard if it doesn't affect the person that's presenting in here. You can see all the other things. I think the most important thing about the UNL alert, they're generally pretty short, as you've seen, but it primarily is to give you good information so you can make good decisions. If you're at the spot where the bad thing is happening, you'll get further details, more information from the first responders. So then you see these posters out and about. Our cartoon guys showed those. There's a lot of good information on there. We're going to go through those individually. So first of all, when we're talking about medical, if you see someone that needs aid on campus, call 911 or even the 2 for Blue number. It really doesn't matter whether you call the 472-2222 or the 911. If you know first aid, perfectly fine to administer it, but make sure you get the experts on the way too. And then we do have automated external defibrillators. Those 2 pictures on the right-hand side show where those were at the time that this picture was taken. There's an app out there called Pulse Point, and if you're someone that is CPR trained, you can actually subscribe to that app, and it can tell you if someone needs help near you. And there have been times where in the city people have had life safety help from people who knew how to do CPR. Those automated defibrillators, they're pretty simple to use, and that's a picture of Officer Jordan White. He's very proud there because this summer we got defibrillators put into all of the patrol cars too. So now all of the police officers also have those defibrillators. So you'll see them out and about on campus, and they're pretty much plug and play how they help you out. So any questions about first aid and when you can do it? Okay. So then for smoke alarms, this is one of those things, and this was a very recent fire drill in that picture. Hamilton Hall did a fire drill this week and last week. All the residence halls have been doing their required fire drills. I would encourage you at some point to have a fire drill in your buildings. They're actually kind of fun. If you know, sometimes people will actually do a cookout or something afterwards if it's a nice day. So the biggest thing to know, you can pull the fire alarm. If there was a fire in this building, it's okay to do. There's no blue dye that sprays out on your hand. You're not going to get in any trouble. I don't know if that happens anywhere, but students always ask that. Just use the nearest exit. The trick to that, and if you look at your building, you might not always come in and out the nearest exit, and it's the nearest exit that's available. So know all the exits to your building. There's probably more building exits than you've been out of. Don't use elevators. The reason you don't is because the fire alarm will trip them to do something. And typically they go to the main floor. So you may not want that. And they can also stop working in a fire too. So stay out of the elevators in a fire. One thing that's interesting, that's different about what you may have learned in elementary school, it's okay to grab your stuff if it's nearby. Like, don't leap through the fire to get it, obviously, but if your computer's right there, you can take it. Definitely you can take your keys and your coat. You know, your teacher in first grade wouldn't allow that, but you can do that here. And get to a safe distance away from the building. Don't go back in until you're allowed to, and that's one of the reasons we tell you you can take your stuff, is because if you're a professor and you want to get in and get your stuff and there was a fire in that building, it could be closed for a week, you know, it could be a while. So again, don't go gather up everything you own. But the other question that always comes up is about people who have disabilities. So if you have a challenge going down the stairs and you can't do it, the best thing to do is somebody stay with you in the stairwell. They're usually the most fire protected place in the building. And then somebody who goes outside can tell the fire department where you are. They are trained to take you down. Don't try to carry somebody down. You could end up hurting yourself and them as well. And I put the picture of the fire extinguisher on there. That's to remind me there are classes on the university that environmental health and safety provide on how to use the fire extinguisher. It's pretty simple. It's the pass system. You pull, you aim, you squeeze, and sweep. It's pass. So, but they'll actually allow people to set up a class and you'll get to put out a fire with the fire extinguisher. So once you know how to use one, you'll feel a little more enabled to do it. Anything you can think about fire drills? Questions are a great thing. Anybody? The thing I want you to know the most about fires is sometimes there's not safety in numbers. We've always heard that, because here's what people do. They say, do you think that alarm's real? Do you think we really need to go? I don't know, what happens all the time. So people can really get into this, and they sort of convince themselves that they don't need to leave. And fires are actually one of the most dangerous things that happen on college campuses. So the trick is I encourage you, I deputize you to be the person that says, okay, everybody go to the nearest exit. Because if we were in the mall today, or if the mall's open, they seem to all be closed now, but if you were in a place where there's a lot of people and the alarm goes off, I guarantee you people will be qualifying why they don't need to leave. And if one person goes, everybody go to the nearest exit, they'll go. So I just encourage you to be that person. So this is my visual learners. If you start at the upper left, that's not an exit because it doesn't say exit. And as you move along, you see it gets trickier. Down here, that's the tricky one. It says exit, but there is a fire. So you have to use your noodle on these when you leave. So I know it's kind of silly, but if you look around in this building, you can see 2 exit signs. So if one of those doors doesn't say exit, that's not the one you want. And a lot of colleges and departments want to spend a lot of time putting maps together with arrows, but really it's this simple. Just look for the ones. There's a lot of work that's done to identify all the exits on campus. Tornado warnings get a little tougher. Anybody in here not from a tornado area, or we're all used to them now? Here in Nebraska, where people are kind of used to tornado warnings, earlier I said people say, is this real, is this not real? Typically with the tornado warning, everyone erroneously goes out and looks for the tornado. That's really not what I want you doing. So you want to, as quickly as you can, move to the lowest level. This would be a pretty good room in a tornado. It's not 100% tornado shelter, but we're down low. There's no windows. We're a little bit below ground level or close to it. You want to get into an interior space. The outside walls are not as good as inside rooms. Get low, cover the back of your head. Most people who are injured in a tornado are hit by stuff that's flying. So things can fly in the window, things can fly around. Buildings can collapse, but even, and I should put a picture in there. I always think of this when I'm doing this, is there's pictures you'll see from maybe Oklahoma where a house, the only thing left is like that middle room. That's why we want you to go with that middle space. It's just the best protection. A really important thing to know about those last 2 bullets is here on campus, we will send a UNL alert out for a tornado warning, but we won't tell you when it's over. And the reason we won't is there could be another one coming right behind, and we don't want you to get a message that it's all clear and you get that message late. So when you hear a tornado warning, assume it's real, go to the basement, and then get your phone out and look and see for when it expires. And so there's stories of people staying a really long time in their buildings on campus because they didn't get the word. But it's not going to come from UNL alert. So those weather radios are super handy. If you have one of those, they're relatively inexpensive, maybe 15, 20 bucks. And you can set it to go off for the tornado warnings. You can set it for a lot of different levels of storms, but you can set it for severe thunderstorms and tornadoes. It'll also give you amber alerts and those kind of things. So another thing to know is the dreaded first Wednesday of the month tornado drill that are really annoying. We recently got a hazard mitigation plan approved by the Chancellor's Office and FEMA, and so now we're eligible for grants. And what I'd like to do is get a whole upgrade so that these can say drill. I hate that it doesn't say drill. The very first time that I went to employee orientation, I think I've been at work like 3 days. It was my Wednesday orientation, and that went off. And the speaker said, "Oh, don't worry about that. That happens all the time." And I thought, man, this is going to be a hard job because people are sort of desensitized by that. And so we want you to really take it real. So if it's not the first Wednesday of the month, it's probably real. So we got another little cartoon here about gas leaks.
And now, another really obvious preparedness fact.
So, let's look at one of these emergency procedures. This time, it's gas leaks. In a gas leak, first responders will decide the best action to take, either evacuation or shelter in place. This might be a good way to remember that. First responders let you know. Should you stay or should you go? Okay, so maybe not the best way to remember. For detailed information about gas leaks on campus, go to emergency.unl.edu.
When you know the facts, it's obvious.
Can you imagine how embarrassing it was when my daughters were still going to school here and I was doing this? So really, the gas leaks are the #1 UNL alert. And usually what happens is they dig up a line that's so old they didn't know it was there, or they dig up the line that's so new that it's not on the map yet. We're always building stuff. And so that's where a lot of them come from. Others are because we've got labs with burners in them, and sometimes those get left on. So the thing about gas leaks is, it's kind of funny to joke about them because, normally they're not a big thing, but every once in a while the building blows up. So what happens is Lincoln Fire and Rescue will come and they will monitor the building to see how safe it is, and usually they'll ventilate it. But if it's inside, they'll usually tell you to leave. If it's outside, sometimes the best thing to do if you're nearby is to stay inside. So again, the UNL alert will say avoid the area, but if you're in the area that's close by, they should tell you more. A lot of times, if there's ever a UNL alert and you want to know more about what it is, feel free to reach out to me because people get really concerned. If you don't get more information, it means that you didn't really need it. And I know that sounds weird, but the last big UNL alert that I remember was there was a suspicious package before the Garth Brooks concert. Remember that? So I wish we'd spend more time telling people about this because it's always interesting. So there was a trailer full of t-shirts. And so our dog, the dog that you see UNL police with, it's trained to detect explosives. And so it sat down and detected explosives. So they brought in the team to look at the trailer to see what it was, and the dog detected one of the 27 chemicals. There's a big number of chemicals it detects. So the responding firefighters, explosive experts, asked if this particular chemical was used in the t-shirts, and they said yes. So the dog alerted to it. And one of the things that we're kind of proud of, that's the first time a dog ever alerted to that trailer. So it means our dog did its job. And all clear was sent once they knew, but you can't just take for granted that just because it's a t-shirt trailer, it's okay, based on where it is. It's in a dangerous spot. So that's how it works when you see a UNL alert. Another example, on East Campus, there was a mailbox that started beeping. Well, that's kind of scary, so they sent out a UNL alert, suspicious package. Well, they moved people back as far as the experts know if it fits through the slot, it can only be so big. But then you'll get calls from people who were maybe a half mile away wanting to know why they weren't evacuated. The bottom line is the experts know how far to move you back. Same with the trailer at the concert. So let's talk about being aware of your environment. So if you see this person on campus ever, you need to let the police department know. Right? That's a little on the extreme side, and that is a gun in his hand too. So even if it's Halloween, we want to know about this person. And the point I'm making here, it's really about the behavior. So the next guy, is there anything spooky that looks See anything spooky about that? Got the big jacket on, kind of a strange fashion choice with the scarf maybe, but not really anything threatening, right? But if it was Saturday and he's wearing that, that would concern us. Why is that person wearing a big heavy coat when it's 100+ degrees, right? So let's say it's fall now and it's nice and cool, and that's the normal wear, is to wear a jacket. If he's going around jiggling all the door handles on all the cars, we want to know about that. We want to send an officer to see, do you just forget what your car looks like, or are you trying to find one that's open? So it's not about what the person looks like, it's about the behavior of the person. So just be aware. If you see somebody that's doing something that it doesn't look like they're supposed to do, it's okay to call the police. They'll get some help to that person. And they may find out they don't need any help. So I don't think this slide is needed as much as it used to be. This is it could happen here. The reality is it almost happened here. And this is out of a lot of people's range anymore. It happened in 1992. A person pointed a rifle in a classroom much like this. That building doesn't exist here anymore. But if that person would have been able to use the weapon, they would have. He was caught and arrested and ended up in a mental facility, a facility for people with mental issues for most of his life. And the last I heard, he was out, but his health is such that he can't hurt anybody. But the point is, it could have happened. In one of these presentations, I spoke to a group where there was a person who was there that day, and they said, we knew there was something really off. We knew that he was upset, and it's probably something that should have been reported. One of our officers always talks about, if you have a coworker that says, hey, I got this new shotgun and I can't wait to go duck hunting, that's not really threatening. But if the person said, hey, I got this new shotgun and I snuck it into work yesterday, that's something we want to know about. So I think you'll know if it's something that should be reported. So a little bit about the active threat, and one reason it doesn't say just active shooter is because there's been knife attacks, there's been a lot of different things happen. So one of the most important things is to have a survival mindset. If you go into a situation thinking you're going to survive, you've got a lot better chance than if you don't think you'll survive. I always use the example of the basketball team thinks they're going to lose. They're going to lose. If they think they're going to win, at least they got a chance of winning. So you want to be aware of your situation. We already talked about that. And you want to prepare. And we're going to watch something here in a minute to help us prepare. And by rehearsal, we want you to rehearse it in your mind. So in this room, we know there's the 2 exits. We've got a door that opens outward. Not perfect, but there's some things we can do about that. We could, the run, hide, fight is the main portion of this. So as we're thinking of the run, hide, fight, if we heard shots outside that door, it's probably not conducive for us to get out of here. So what we would probably do is hide in here. So what I would try to do is turn all the lights off, close that door, pile stuff up against it. I'd probably take my belt and put it on the door handle thing because that can keep it from opening. There's a way to do that. And you can look that up if you have time sometime. And then we try to get someplace where we were safe. And this isn't the greatest room for that. And there's a lot of rooms like that aren't the greatest. So if we knew this building well, and I don't know it that well, if we knew we could get to a better room, that's where our run comes in. And so these steps are in order. Run first, run's the best option. If we can get far away, that's the best option. Hide is the second best thing. And that's behind things that the bad guy can't get to us to. In some cases, it might be an office. Turn out your lights, get under the desk, and make it look like nobody's there. Because these people generally are trying to do as much damage as fast as they can. And so if you can get the good guys on the way, and you can get somewhere where you can survive a while, you have a pretty good chance. And then the last example is fight. And fight just means self-defense, whatever you can do. Everything is legal at that point. If someone's trying to end you, you have every right to end them. And that's a challenge to think about, but that's just the fact. of run, hide, fight. So I'm going to show you a video, and I always caution, and then there's been a couple of times I'm glad I did this. This is going to be very mild simulated violence like you might see on a regular evening TV show. But it's going to make you think a little bit, and it'll give you some examples to think about on what a run, hide, fight situation can be. Let's see if this will work for us. We might have to watch a commercial. No?
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference. Run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
So there's a lot to unpack there, and there's a lot to think about. So one of the things that I think is really important to think about run, hide, fight. Have any of you ever been in a committee? Everybody's been in a committee, right? Think how hard as a committee or as a university it is to commit to saying this, to run, hide, fight. And now know that the government, police departments would not have said that run, hide, fight's good if it hasn't saved lives. So, I mean, it's the best thing we have is run, hide, fight. And so as you're thinking about this, and I'd encourage you, even though you've seen that video, maybe think about this for a while and watch it again sometime, because you'll see more every time you see it. I show this all the time, and I'm always like, you know, there's things I think about, like silence your cell phone. I think if a person's shooting that loud gun, he's probably not going to hear a cell phone. But it is an interesting tip. You know, any one of those things that you can remember, get behind something sturdy, turn out your lights. I mean, one of the best stories I have, I was at an agronomy hall, and a professor who's retired now, I think, he said, you know, I don't think that turning off the light thing would work, because I said, you know, one of the best things you could do is put all the students up against the wall, the lights are out, there's windows up at the top, you can tell the lights are out, lock the door, and they'll move on. Well, you could tell, this guy is nuts. And I hadn't been here very long ago, that was almost 9 years ago. And right then, he turned the door handle, and he put his key, checked it, put his key in and opened it up. And when he opened it up, there was a professor in there practicing his PowerPoint with all the lights off, and he said, oh, I didn't think he was in here. And then he just smiled and looked at me, because it's like, see? You would have moved on, you know, you would have kept going. So there's some key points I want you to remember from this, and one of them, they said, don't take your stuff. So when an officer's approaching, this is a really safe look for a police officer. You don't have a gun, you're not going to do any harm to them. You have to be careful, and you know, just a cell phone or anything else in your hand, that's going to, you know, this could look like a gun. So just, you know, try to look good guy, good guy, good guy. That's what you're thinking in your head. Don't run up to them. It's okay to say, he's in room 15. That would be perfect to say, that kind of thing. But they're going to be laser focused on getting the bad guy. And they talked about how they don't stop and help the injured. And that, in the beginning, was absolutely true. But more and more fire departments are getting trained tactically to go in right behind them. So, and some doctors are actually trained to put on vests now and go in. So that is evolving too, but it's not going to be their number one priority. The number one priority is to stop the threat. So, questions? You know, it used to be when I would do this, we would talk about this for a long time. People would say, I don't know if we should fight or not. I think now everybody's pretty comfortable with, you know, gang up on the person and do whatever you can, if that's your only choice. There's a couple of other things on here too. I guess there's not. So the other thing, this is more important than run, hide, and fight, and it's prevention. So if you think you know someone is disgruntled, and let me mention something else too. A lot of times people ask me where our safe room should be if we have an active shooter. That's not really thinking the right way, because the chances are a disgruntled person is going to be familiar with your plans and procedures. So you're going to have to make this up on the fly. Like, I would never say, everybody go to this room, because then they would know where to go to do the harm, right? So you want to have your personal plans on this. Like 2 or 3 of you say, well, if this happens, we're going that way. If we can't go that way, we're going this way. That's the way you want to think about this. And then the prevention part, I've circled that UNL report. That used to be called tips. That's where you can send in things. But if it's something imminent or something large, I would encourage you to call the police department and ask for an investigator to start an investigation. We have the teams on campus that can look at this. This is really better for HR things, but it's better than nothing. You know, if you called in and said, I think Mark's a little suspicious, then that would go to the police chief and several other people, and they would check up on it. But if it's something imminent, definitely call the police. That top bullet that says leakage, that's a police term. Our police officers like to have that in here. It just means that people almost always talk about it. There's only one example in the last 20 years that I can think of where somebody didn't say, yeah, now that I think about it, I could see that that person was going to do that. And the only one I can think of is the Las Vegas one. That's a really odd case. But in every other case, there were signs, there were signs, there were signs. So that's the best thing, is prevention. So we haven't talked about every single bad thing that can happen on campus. You can look up earthquakes and all sorts of stuff on the website. We've had some fun with this in the past. Sometimes the students would say, well, what happens if there were bears loose on campus? It seems a little far-fetched, but you know, they pointed out you don't necessarily run from a bear, and you know, we've had some fun with that. But COVID's been our biggest one, and you know, we've adapted and we've moved with COVID on campus. We've done things to keep classes open, and we have teams that are doing those things. So, but we're kind of running on hiding and fighting COVID too, if you think about it. So this is what you have been working on, is the building emergency action plans. And I don't know how aware everyone is in this room, but this is what you're working on, is this template. I think you have it completed too, don't you? Or you're...
As far as we know, it is.
Yeah. So these are all the things that you can consider specifically in your building. And then we have these emergency teams too. So once a month, there's a threat assessment team that meets on campus, and they're trained to know the difference between what's really a threat and what just sounds like a threat. Some of the things that I think sound threatening or you think sound threatening to them may not. And in some cases that's because, you know, one example that they give is the hunter doesn't say, hey deer, I'm coming to hunt you. You know, there's a different level, and people that study that know what a threat is. And so if you think it's a threat, you let them know and they figure it out. We also have an emergency operations center team. We have 2 EOC coordinators, I'm one of them, and then we have EOC directors. And then we're set up in a national incident management system way of dealing with emergencies. It's a standardized system, and we use that here on campus, and we have, I don't know, about 35 people that are involved in that. Then we have subject matter experts, because we have them all over campus. We have healthcare people, we have ag folks, we have IT, any kind of disaster that can happen on campus. We have people on campus that can also be experts. And then we have a family assistance center. If we did have some sort of violence or some sort of natural hazard that happened on campus, we have a group that's been trained, and some are just in time trained to come together and identify a room on campus or a place on campus. There's 2 spots that have been identified where that may be where you come to get the most recent information on your loved ones or co-workers, and get counseling if it's needed, those sort of things. And then the Joint Information Center, which is primarily UCOM, would be the one that does the crisis communication. So finally, there's some resources out there. I have a QR code and a survey. You can take a picture of that with your camera phone. The students like doing it that way, and do a survey on what you thought about what I said today. If you have any recommendations of what's done different, that's where you can do it. There's that the site too. Any questions, comments, or thoughts?
How do we get the UNL alert on our computers?
On your computers. So you'll need to talk to your IT folks, and so they're able to download, it's just a piece that goes on the bottom here. I don't know if this one has it or not. Yes, it does. So it says status operational, but that right there is what it is. So your IT folks have access to that, and they'll push it down to your computers, or they can add it individually. And one of the nice things about that is we can actually see that it was seen by other folks. And that was a very difficult thing to get approved for general purpose classrooms. It was approved for all of them. I went to the faculty senate. First I went to the leadership team and then the faculty senate. And at the time, believe it or not, there was a lot of pushback that we don't want that interruption to classrooms. And, you know, you get the, do you want to update Adobe, and you get all the other stuff. I think somebody's shooting people on East Campus, you'd want to know about it, whether you're on city campus or not. So eventually they did approve it, and it was an almost unanimous vote. So it's available for all general purpose classrooms, all college, all staff computers. So it's a pretty simple thing to get done. So I think it wouldn't be too hard. If you need some help pushing, I'd be happy to help.
Thank you.
Good question. Anybody else? Well, thanks so much for taking some time to listen. I hope this is helpful. I hope you got something new that you can think about, and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you.